As Meadle said, this is a kind of special presentation for me. I've done this a lot around the world, from Singapore to Helsinki, but I'm doing it now at the place where really this story started about 10 years ago at NC State. I'm also doing it in front of my parents, so if I seem nervous about it, even though I've done it a lot, they're the reason. So I call this an entrepreneurship tale. It's really going to be me kind of making fun of myself a lot to make you know how easy this actually is to do. My favorite quote that I like to start every presentation with is from a man named Paul Buchheit. Paul Buchheit's the creator of Gmail. He's one of the founders of FriendFeed, which got bought by Facebook. And he says, limited life experience plus overgeneralization equals advice. And so I'm not going to try to give you advice today. What I'm going to try to give you is my story. I think telling stories is far more engaging, more fun anyways. So I'm going to tell you my story, and you take from that whatever you will. So let's get started. So here's where we are today, right? And they say you pitch the VCs last thing first. So today I'm sitting in front of you. I run a startup out in San Francisco. We now have an office here in Raleigh. We have 21 people. We've raised 2 rounds of funding, a couple $1 million. We have thousands of customers, tens of millions of end users. I like the last stat. I like that a lot. 182 people see our product every second. Most importantly, we're learning stuff and we're having fun. But that wasn't always the case. 2005, I came from NC State, which out in California is kind of like that's not MIT or Stanford. I was writing Java code for a company that did reporting on urinals. So not exactly, the most interesting line of work. And in between was basically 3,000 miles, a couple ex-co-founders, an ex-girlfriend, a couple months of homelessness. By the way, I don't think they know that, so let's try to play that on the down low. But a lot of good stories. So let's start off. So when I'm working at this urinal reporting factory, if you will, my friend passes me this link to this web startup called Kiko. And they were doing an idea I was really passionate about, which was making an Ajax calendar for the web. This is pre-Google Calendar. This is right after Gmail comes out. Back when you kind of thought, hey, we just add Ajax to anything and a business will happen. So I looked at this and I was like, wow, they're doing the thing I want to do. I'm so bummed out, right? I wanted to do that idea. And then I look at it and I go, oh, good. It looks like shit. So I thought there was an opportunity. And I think this is pretty crucial. I was going to say, well, maybe I should go build my own, but instead I did this. I sent them this letter, this email. I'll give you a second to read that. I'm just kidding. So basically the email says, I see you built a cool calendar. It's tons of functionality. There's like progressive disclosure and all this stuff. But it looks really bad. And it's really hard to use. And the key thing here, if I stop here, this is like most comments on TechCrunch, right? So this is the average internet commenter. But I said something different. I said, I'll fix that for you. And by the way, if you want to get a startup person's attention, do not write an email this long. I would think I was a crazy person if I got that email today. But moving on. So I sent them all these sketches. I got really excited because I went to State for computer science. I wasn't really a designer. I didn't go to design school, but I wanted to be a designer. And I thought, startups are a great place to do roles you have no business doing. So I sent them some sketches, and I later found out they had no idea what these things were. They said, we don't know. You look like kind of scribblings on a napkin. But eventually I sent them this, like a working HTML prototype. And then they start paying attention more. And they're like, this is actually pretty good. And they said, we want to work with you on this. And I said, cool. And I said, why do I work on this full time? And they're like, okay. I said, how much do you guys get paid? Right? And they're like, well, $1,700 a month, $10.99. And I was like, I'll take that. It's fine, whatever, that's cool. So started traveling up to Cambridge. Now I didn't know anything about these guys other than this, right? I just talked to them on the phone and was just kind of traveling between here and Cambridge and working from my house here and flying up there, which by the way, Cambridge is really cold in the winter. I didn't know this as a southerner. Turns out they were in this thing called Y Combinator, which I'm sure you all know what Y Combinator is now. No one at that point we knew what it was other than Paul Graham's kind of a cool guy. I like orange signs, user voice. We had a really great group of people here. Kiko is the guys on the right. Justin, who went on to do Justin TV, Twitch TV, Social Cam, and now Exec. The other guys in the corner, which by the way, Steve and Alexis are going to kill me if this gets on the internet, is like, those are the guys founders of Reddit. So Reddit and Kiko, we basically slept on the same couches up in Cambridge for a while. And this was great. We got the launch out there, and we got our Slashdot post. Dating myself here. But we were really psyched. We got our big launch, like, yeah, shit's happening. And this is our first kind of oh shit moment. And the oh shit moment is when we realize adding Ajax to something doesn't actually make a business. And we realize that none of the three of us on the team have actually ever used a calendar, because we're just like college kids, right? What do I need a calendar for? I didn't go to class. What are we going to do with this? So we kind of just, we pretty quickly lost our passion on this. And so, you know, we went to the dead pool. Justin had one crazy idea before it went in the dead pool. And I said, that's a silly idea, but it doesn't seem like it would hurt to put the company up for sale on eBay. I said, I don't know who's going to buy a failed company, or the assets of the company, but I tried it. And it sold for $250,000. And, you know, honestly, when you take out the fees that eBay takes out and you pay back angel investors, it really wasn't a lot of money, but it was something, right? We have an exit on eBay. And so, I mean, this got me excited, right? I've always wanted to do startup stuff. I've now found a community of people that also want to do startup stuff. We've done something, we put it out there, people have played with it, they liked it, we didn't know what we were doing, but we made something happen. So after this, I wrote down 4 ideas of what to do next. I moved out to the West Coast and started executing on them. The first idea was an open source project. Like I said, I'm kind of this weird designer engineer, which is, I guess, not as weird anymore. And this open source project was basically called Ajax Scaffold. It was a way to have basically nice UI for just raw database tables. You can imagine for like backends of your systems. What was really important about this project is that it taught me how to fold people into a team. So there ended up being 5 people on this project. And the only reason there were 5 people on this project is because I put out a really crappy V1, and then I listened for anyone who was like, that's a good idea, but written really bad. I'm going to make it better. And I would email them and say, let's not fracture the community. Let's work on this together. Let's join forces, which is just a great way of me saying, like, let's build this brand that I started, not yours. But it was important because usually in open source, people have a tendency to go their own way. And we eventually got a team of 5 really smart people working on one idea, and all because I constantly reached out to people and tried to get them to join. And funny enough, 2 out of the 4 of the founders of User Voice came from this project. So we worked on open source together long enough that we were very comfortable with coding with one another, and it made it really easy to do a startup together. The second project I did was a thing called Swim Timer. And Swim Timer was just, I was doing a lot of freelance work because after Kiko sold on eBay, people said, hey, you're not a terrible designer. We've seen your work. And we also know you're available because your company is dead. So I was tracking a lot of billable hours, and so I created a little tool to do this. And this was a great project for me because it was an experiment in how little I can do as a single person on a project. I'm doing database design, I'm doing UI, I'm doing marketing, I'm doing everything. And it was great because I get to see all sides of building a project and getting a product out there. It's also great because it teaches you that you can't get anywhere in this world by yourself. The third idea, I don't really remember the third idea. I like to think it was Pinterest meets Instagram Groupon-y. We'll just say that's what it was going to be. But the fourth idea was User Voice. And so User Voice was basically take Reddit for companies, for customer feedback. That's kind of the genesis of the idea. We built a prototype for User Voice in 6 weeks, starting in December 2007. The initial test was we hooked it up to the Swim Timer community. So the Swim Timer community is really useful because while it wasn't a big commercial success, it had about 3,000 to 4,000 daily active users, which means now I've got a community to test this community product against. And it performed phenomenally. Within, I figured, well, I'll give it a week, and if anyone actually uses this thing, then it'll have worked. Within 24 hours, I had this list of hundreds of people who have given me feedback, and the top 5 ideas were relatively what I knew to be the top 5 ideas, with the exception of 1 or 2. But what was important is I knew that from talking to people over months and months. And now in 24 hours, just by putting up this form, I knew exactly, here's the top 5 ideas, and here are the people behind them. So that was kind of our MVP. We're good to go. But what was really important was we got some angel funding. And what I really like to call this is fool funding. You've heard the term friends and family. Really, it's friends, family, and fools. And I love this guy, but he is a fool. Because no one should give you a check for $35K without any other co-investors. But he did, and I'm thankful for it. I also realize now how little 35K is. I mean, I remember sitting there and being like, 35K? Dude, this is great. And then 2.5 months later being like, where'd that go? So we launched April 2008, and things are going well. We're getting this product out there, and we hit oh shit moment number 2. which I just alluded to, which is 35K isn't actually that much money. We got as soon as we actually start paying taxes on that, and we paid legal fees. I think we last about 2.5 months of paying ourselves. So that's really not a good runway if you're doing projections and a business plan. Which was the right time for the Mistress to swoop in. So the Mistress was a stealth startup, had an amazing team, right? I just randomly bumped into these guys. I think I actually bumped into them at a startup weekend, no less. And I said, I'll come in and do some free consulting on UI design for you, because that's just what I did. And then they started recruiting me for their team, and their team was really amazing. It was 6 guys, 4 of them went to college before they were like 16. Like, the CEO was like 21 and had been an SVP and an EIR, and I'm like, okay. And it kind of helps that they'd raised a lot of money, or at least relative to my 35K, from all the right people. This guy's Ron Conway, he's like the godfather of angel investing. I was starstruck. I was like, oh my gosh, these are the guys. I can't wait. I've got to do this. This is such a great opportunity. I lasted at that company for 60 days. And the reason I lasted at that company for 60 days is because they really sold me on coming to the company. The guys were great, super smart. I could not care about what they were working on at all. And I learned a really important thing, which was they were working on gaming stuff, they were kind of social stuff, and I realized I don't give a shit about that. I care about building products that people use for work, that people use for productivity. There's value in doing entertainment, but I can't get excited about it. And it just so happened that user voice was still, I was basically working at the startup from basically 10 to 11 p.m. at night, and then go home and work in user voice for another 4 hours. So you could say I was getting a little burned out. So anyway, so I'm like, all right, guys, this great startup opportunity, I got to get back to my baby. So yes, we can. We can do this. We're going to get back. We're going to make user voice work. Damn it. And then my co-founder quit. He was like, well, I'm glad you're enthused, but I kind of want to go back to that consulting thing we were doing that was paying pretty well. Girlfriend quit too. She said, I don't know that you'll even notice I'm gone because you're barely here, but good luck. And so she kind of owned all the stuff. Literally, this is all my stuff. I don't know why I saved the bike trainer. But I fit everything in 2 suitcases. I did take her car, though. That was the thing. You can take the stuff. I'll take your car. I can put all my stuff in the car. And I was actually homeless. I couch surfed a bit. I stayed at hostels occasionally, which I learned a trick, which is if you go to San Francisco hostel and you give them a California ID that says you live 2 blocks away, they don't really like that. But if you pull out your passport that says you're from North Carolina, you're golden. So just don't say anything. Don't give away that you are very much an American, not the rest of the drunk Australians, and you're good. By the way, the market was not so good at this time either. It kind of looked like that. People put out decks that said this. So yeah, this is not good. All right, this is like all right, we're still doing this. I don't care, we're still doing this. And this is my dad. He's in the front row now, like I said, making me nervous. This is his, you want money again, don't you, face. And what's funny about this face is I can actually see this face just hearing him over the phone, right? Because there were probably 5 or 6 times I called him and be like, we're so close, this funding is gonna come through, we're so close. And I wasn't close at all. And this would happen about every 6 weeks. And to his credit, he put that face on, but he still forked it over. We were a completely virtual team at this point. We were in San Francisco, we were in Wausau, Wisconsin, and Seattle. Not really Seattle. And I said, we got to get in the same room. We can't, we got to take this seriously. We got in the same room. We relocated to Santa Cruz. And if you know California, Santa Cruz is not exactly Silicon Valley. It's kind of over the hill, but it was perfect. Like, we got a free office. There were very little distractions. It was winter, so no one was going to the beach. So we just went heads down on this business that we were going to make this work. And we found a 3rd co-founder. So like I said, my original technical co-founder dropped out, right? He said, forget this. I want to go back to making money and not being poor. And I was like, okay, I can't raise money with 2 people. I said 2 people is a project, 3 is a viable business, or you can fake it. And so I grabbed this guy, Scott Rutherford, who was another guy on that active scaffold project, and said, hey, look, do you want to come do this startup thing? And again, foolishly enough, he said yes. And we had some momentum, actually. So while we weren't looking and we were just trying to survive, user voice was actually doing pretty well. We had like 35% month-over-month account growth. And really a lot of it came from the fact of, I'd like to say we planned this, but we didn't. It just ended up being kind of a naturally viral product. It's done in public, you could see other people using it, and you could say, oh, I get how this works, I'll use one and install this myself. Okay. And by the way, pro tip, you go to pitch someone, make the graph look like this. It's the same graph, right? Stretch the y-axis, right? So we got funded. I mean, like, and I'm going to kind of skip over this because on our blog, I have this really in-depth thing about our original seed funding process. And just suffice to say, within 10 days of each other, I thought we were both screwed, and then we were oversubscribed. And that's, I think, talking to other people, fairly typical. But if you're interested in that, there's like a whole big write-up on that on our blog, blog.uservoice.com/founders. But we got it, right? And that's when I realized that's really just the beginning. And I think what's interesting is like when you've never been funded before and you're starting something up, funding is like the ultimate goal. Like, we're going to get funded, and then everything will be okay. And then you get funded and you realize, oh, we have way more problems now than we had before. We just aren't going to die tomorrow. Hiring still sucks. Founders are still kind of catty. And I'll tell you the scariest thing. When you go from burning like 10K a month to burning like 90K a month within like 60 days, it scares you, right? You think, I worked all this time to get this money and it's going to be gone in 6 months. So that's my story. I mean, and user voice is kind of, this story really ended about 3 years ago, but I think it's really important for you guys because it's kind of, I think, where a lot of you are. And so some of the lessons from this phase of our business were, one, beware of people with all the answers. They aren't usually right. And I think the tough thing is, as a first-time entrepreneur, when you look at anyone, they're probably gonna have more experience than you. Therefore, they're gonna seem like they're smarter than you. But if you kind of extrapolated out where you would be when you were their age or something, maybe they wouldn't be as smart as you. So that kind of goes along with my thing of start learning to go with your gut, right? You need to develop an instinct, develop a gut, listen to it, right? It may take you to the wrong place, but learn to listen to that. And don't expect anyone to answer the hard questions for you. I can't tell you how many times I sat and like, my whole pitch is perfect, except this slide, I have no idea what to do. Maybe if I bring in this MBA guy, he'll tell me how to fill out this slide. No, he won't. No one will tell you how to build your startup. You have to figure this out. You have to struggle through and answer the questions you most don't want to answer. In fact, that's one of the most valuable things about a funding process is that there's an external force forcing you to answer questions you'd rather sweep under the rug. Be sure to check what domains you already own. Speaking of MBAs, do we have any Duke people here? Yeah. One? Are you an MBA from Duke? Okay, good. So we looked at we were looking for a third co-founder, a non-technical guy. We were interviewing people, and one of the guys came in and had an MBA from Duke, and I'm like, I've not heard good things about MBAs, but let's check him out. And he was not the right fit at all. But we sat down in a coffee shop, and he said to me, this name of this company just doesn't really work for me. He said, the original name of the company was not User Voice, it was usersuggest.com. And I'm not good at naming, and that's a terrible name. And he said, I've got a better name for you. It's already owned by someone. I'm like, what good is that? But here it is, User Voice. That is way better. I was like, who owns that? He's like this Richard White guy in North Carolina. Now we're sitting in a coffee shop in San Francisco. So I'm not sure who was dumber, me or him, right? Me for not ever looking to notice that I registered that 4 years ago when I first wrote down the idea. Or him for not noticing like, you're talking to me, bro. Like, what? MBAs are useful. Market, then team, then product. We did User Voice in the reverse, and I think as engineers, you have a tendency to start off with, I'm gonna build this idea. I'm gonna find people that like this idea. I'm gonna try to find people to sell this to, which is wrong, wrong, wrong. You should do the exact opposite of that, right? You should find a market, you don't have to find an idea, but find a market that you can get passionate about, that you can learn the problems in, that you can then create, build a team that also can get passionate around that problem space, and then build a product. Caveat to that is, also be aware that you can love a lot of things. Startup people tend to be passionate people. And passionate people can get passionate about all sorts of things, even things like customer service. I remember talking to some guy who did like retargeted ads. I'm like, you're an engineer. Do you really get passionate about retargeted ads? He's like, absolutely. And I think that's I think that's the thing. I think when you're coming into it, you think like, I'm just going to do whatever I think is really cool. But if you go learn about some crappy market, even like urinal inspecting, there's probably something to get excited about there because someone has a problem and you probably like solving problems. Passionate people can solve all sorts of problems. I think I already did that. So here's one you may not know. So when it comes to investors, no data is often better than some data. And what do I mean by that? A lot of guys think, well, I'm just going to go grab some revenue and then I'm going to go pitch these guys. The problem with that is you've started to degrade your ability to sell the dream and sell the hope and the vision. When we raised our initial seed round, and we started getting paying customers only in our first VC pitch meeting, which is basically a year into the business. And the reason why we did this is because every time we were in a pitch meeting, I could pull up a dashboard and it says, oh, we have $90 worth of monthly recurring. Oh, we have $300 worth of monthly recurring. And within the end of 5 weeks, we had $10,000 of monthly recurring. Now, here's what's important. It's only 30 days, so they're all inside a trial. So there's no trial conversion. There's also no churn, right? There's also not enough data for them to extrapolate and say, oh, well, here's what you're worth because I can see where you're going. But it was enough data to say, people are willing to pay for this. I have lots of free growth, but I don't have 6 months worth of data so that you can see how things are going. Because most of the time your graph will not go like this. Most of the time your graph will go like this. So at a seed round, you don't want to start capturing too many numbers too soon, and then people will be like, that's not so good. This is important. Getting funded is a lot like losing your virginity. People obsess about it before it happens. After it happens, they're kind of like, and it really has nothing to do with how you execute your business. I mean, it has some, right? It like enables you to do things you couldn't, but it's not the end all be all. It is just a tool. And the thing that's tough is that, and I gossip about this all the time, constantly, right? It's like the Bay Area like gossip du jour, right? Who's getting funded by whom? Oh my gosh, did you hear who they're talking to? Like, it's fun, right? But it's not a validation of what you do. It's not a validation of who you are. So just get it. If you try hard enough, I almost guarantee you actually pay attention to what people are telling you and pay attention to the signals investors are giving back to you, you will get there one day. You might be the 40-year-old virgin, but eventually you will be the 40-year-old non-virgin. Be sure to have a sense of urgency. So, this is the problem with doing something on the side and not, I mean, you've got to say like, I have 30 days to make this work. I have 2 weeks to make this work. Like, without that, you're dead. You have to create a sense of urgency. Great ways to create sense of urgency, if you don't have them, is take your parents' money. That'll create a sense of urgency. But there's other ways you could do it without potentially endangering your family's future. But find that and create that sense of urgency. Because my mom's here, I'm not going to curse, but don't be so clever. Be clever with your business, not with how your infrastructure your business. For example, one of our earlier startups, we were like, 4-year investing seems really long. We're going to do 2 years. Like, retarded. Don't do that. Get a good lawyer. Do everything by the book. Do your product. Be clever in your product. Don't be clever with how you write your code. This is really cool. Be clever with your product. Be really boring in the rest. And my last thing here is be a joiner, not a loner. Almost everything that has worked out well for me is when I sucked up my ego and I said, there's stuff I want to do for me, but I'm going to go work on this guy's thing. And I'm going to put my ego aside and I'm going to learn to work with someone else. And I think you guys coming out here today represents your willingness to do that. And I think it's just absolutely important. And so that's what I have. I want to encourage you guys to go out there and do this. And I want to leave a little more thing, since this is going to be the last time I do this and my parents are here. I want to thank you guys for putting in the money to this. Because most of this story doesn't happen without you in that money face. I want to thank you for buying me that 286 when I was in middle school. I want to thank you for not getting mad at me when I opened it up and it was all in pieces on the floor. Thank you for giving me that first IT job, putting me in front of, I think, hospital executives when I was 16, which probably may have been bad for that deal. I don't know. Thank you for teaching me that business is more about the people in it than the bottom line. Just thank you guys so much. I wouldn't be here today without you. If you guys have any applause, I hope you directed at them. Thank you.